I am grateful to have you here today. I'm Jen Lamia. I know pretty much everyone already. I'm the superintendent, very proud superintendent of an amazing school district with teachers who are working very hard, administrators and parents who have worked hard as well with their children at home during that time that we were in e-learning. I want to start by saying that e-learning evolved from the moment that we left school in March. And while some of it was not ideal, less than ideal, or fantastic, depending upon the specific situation, it was something that was very new to us. And I want to recognize that it was not ideal in all situations. We asked for parent feedback and we asked for teacher and administrator feedback so that we could, from the late spring, start formulating plans for instruction and plans for schedules so that our e-learning, should we go to it in the fall or should your child be in a hybrid model, will look much different than it did in the spring. We listened closely to a bunch of things that people told us that were really valuable, like having students on a schedule every day, having accountability to every class in every class period for A, attendance, B, for work, for providing that feedback. So we listened to all of that, and every schedule that we have for each school building is different than the schedules that were there before. And we are intending that if students are at home or if students are in school, they are following that schedule every day. I'll explain that in more detail when I get to the specific schedules. But since we are mostly dealing with Wampus and Coman Hill today, right here in this meeting, I'd like to talk a little bit about that experience before I show slides. I did recommend to the Board of Education that all of our students in K-6 will be coming to school every day socially distanced. Children in kindergarten through sixth grade do not necessarily have the learning dispositions that later middle school and high school students have. That was the rationale for getting those students into school every single day socially distanced. Socially distanced means that those students sometimes will be, they will be split between two classes sometimes if they're not scheduled for something like a gym or a cafeteria or a library space. In the event the children are spread between two classes, it means that the classroom teacher and either the other teacher or the aide in the other room are going to be spending, the teacher will be spending time with each student in each of those groups. So there is no one student in the elementary who is going to receive more instruction than a student in another room. We are splitting that time. So how teachers are going to do that is going to be in a multitude of ways. Teachers are going to be in charge of all of those children, whether they're in the class that the teacher happens to be in at that moment or in the class next door. Remember, the teacher will be switching back and forth. The teacher is designing the learning instruction for that child all day. So one question might be, well, why is it beneficial to have the children in all day if they're spending 2.5 periods in total with an aide? Or 2.5 periods in total with another teacher other than the classroom teacher. And the point is that they have somebody there to support their learning, number one, and that every child will see their teacher every day. So I will be showing this when I get to some of the slides, but I wanted to start by saying this is the proposed plan. The board approved us moving forward with this plan for September. This is a fluid plan, and at any moment it can change. There are some districts that are saying that they are not coming out with a plan until right before school starts. I know that if our numbers stay the same in Westchester County, we can continue to do this plan. And so we would like to move forward with our approach for the fall, knowing that at any given moment, we may have to rely on the other plans that I sent to you last night, which may include all remote instruction or may include hybrid. So knowing that, we will be waiting until the end of the summer to determine what the governor is expecting of schools. But as of now, we are moving forward with the K-6, all in person every day, and the 7 through 12 in a hybrid fashion. So I am going to share my screen to give you our meeting. Okay, and I'll put you, give me 1 second to get rid of my sides and to present.
And we do see it.
You do?
Yes.
Tim?
Yep.
Okay, great,
We
because
can
I
see it.
can't
Thank
see
you.
anyone anymore. So I'm going to rely on Tim to let me know.
Yep.
And that's Dr. Tim Kaltenecker. Many of you saw
Hi,
him.
everyone.
I'm going to rely on Tim to let us know what this looks like.
Yep.
First of all, when we were coming up with these plans, we looked at the American Academy of Pediatrics and what they were recommending for return to school. We looked at the Department of Health. We looked at CDC recommendations. And what they have basically been telling us is we need to look at transition rates, transmission. We need to look at cohorting. That was really essential to us at the K-5 level. We needed to look at repurposing spaces, social distancing, limiting participation in activities where we can't really social distance, how we prepare as a school district with the county for when somebody gets sick, what is our contact tracing going to look like with the county, and how are we going to try to make sure that everyone is safe before coming to school. All of our faculty and staff who come to school every day have to fill out an electronic attestation. Every morning that I get up, I look at the attestation, I take my own temperature because we know that we may not be able to note if we have a slightly elevated temperature as adults, right? So I'm taking my temperature every morning, I'm filling out the attestation. We are asking parents to do the same thing, and we will send something home with you to do with your child, but we are not asking for you to submit that. The state does not say we have to. Periodically, the state says we need to, and we will send that periodically, but we are asking every parent's compliance every single morning to do those self-help checks with your children. And as an added extra piece, we are putting in temperature scanners in every single one of the buildings. There will be 3 assigned to each building, and they look very much like a metal detector, a walk-through scanner for temperature. If those are not in by the time school starts, we already have in hand temperature scanners, and we will be scanning every single human being who comes into the school. But I beg of you, and I plead and implore you to not rely on those systems to tell us if your children are sick. Your children will have already potentially been on a bus or entered our schools at that point, and it's really crucial that you do it at home. For us, it's a second check. So we did look at social distancing, adjusting schedules, cohorting. We looked at the age of students and their ability to learn in an all-person or hybrid setting. We looked at the rate of transmission, which for elementary students is much lower than some of those late teenage and high school years. We looked at health and safety protocols. I want to start by saying that we have had tremendous amount of guidance from high-level medical professionals to do this work. Our district and our Board of Education has a consultant, Dr. Thomas Murray. He is with the Yale New Haven Children's Hospital. He is the Associate Director of Pediatric Immunology. So this is a key person who has been on the phone with me and back and forth with me and has met with the board and has given selflessly of himself to make sure that our school plans look good. We also have medical professionals in the community that we have been relying on. Dr. Richard Stumacher, who is in critical care at Northwell Health. We have Dr. Price, and who is a pediatrician. We have Lori Dyer, who is a pediatrician, and we also have Dr. Frank Contessessa in town, who's an internist who have been helping us, and Dr. Casaro, our school physician. They have been on every single part of this health and safety plan with me and with these protocols. So I want you to know that I'm Dr. Lamia, but that is a doctor of letters, not of medicine. I don't pretend to be one. We have relied heavily on these professionals to help us. Looking at social emotional well-being, I'll touch on that a little more later. Looking at staffing and what we needed to do to be able to have this happen. You may ask yourself, why do other school districts choose to do remote, choose to do half days, or choose to do hybrid models at the elementary school? Why is Byram Hills choosing to bring all students in? And I think the part that's important to know is that we can socially distance these children. We have the square footage. This is about square footage. It is about staffing. It is about student learning dispositions and busing. So while we have the square footage and we will get the staffing to be able to help us do this, Busing, it's not an option for us to do half days for elementary school every day, have half in the morning and half in the afternoon. It is simply not a busing option for us. And regarding the hybrid, we just don't think that the kids have these learning dispositions to be managing some of their own instruction at home. We have had numerous conversations with the Department of Health regarding contact tracing. I am not a medical professional. I did take the Johns Hopkins COVID tracing course so that I can feel confident in whatever it is that the Department of Health is going to be helping us with at the point that we need contact tracing. Something that is significant is that I understand that at any given moment, we are going to have a live case in our district. I know that the contact tracing tells us that you have to have direct contact with a person with COVID to be a person, that might have to quarantine. We are looking at that. I know that the Department of Health will give us guidance about whether we need to shut down cohorts or shut down entire buildings. But I want to gain the confidence of our school community. When March happened, we left school approximately a week before the rest of the county. And the reason we left school at that time is because the Board of Education, our school administrators, teachers, and I just started to feel that this was not safe. And we were not confident in what was happening at the Department of Health as they were struggling themselves to deal with a very new pandemic. Know that the district will make its own decisions if need be. And if we do not feel comfortable with Department of Health recommendations for shutting down a cohort, and we believe we should shut down a grade level or a school, that the district will be doing that. They are our guidance for that. So first we looked at how many parents are actually planning on sending their children back to school. We have almost 2,400 students in the school district. We had 2,147 responses. And we asked, if you returned, and we returned every day, what percentage of you would come? If you look at the blue, that was another compelling reason for Byram Hills to strive to get their students in socially distanced on a K-5 level. I will show you disaggregated data in just a moment. We have, do you plan to send your children to school if we do something hybrid? And we have, yes, 80% would be sending their children if it is hybrid. These are the disaggregated numbers, and that is, I think, the highest survey response. I cannot believe Byram Hills is amazing. Usually they say you'll get 20 to 25% of people responding to a survey. So this was pretty incredible. But if you look at the numbers, this helped to guide us to in the return to school scenario. When I look at Wampus and Coman Hill, I understand that if 77% and 73% are planning on sending their children to school, if there's a certain percentage who aren't, the not decided can still decide, but this is cause to bring children back into the school buildings. So what is going to happen if you are a yes, if you are a no, and if you are a not decided? I want to be explicit about this. If it is a yes, I will show you the school plan for Wampus and Coman Hill in a moment. If you are a no, there could be two reasons why you are not returning to school. One reason is that you are choosing to keep your children home to homeschool them, that you would like to go through a specific organization. We do have a handful of parents in the district who do that every year. Perhaps people want to homeschool. Perhaps that is a choice. The other choice is New York State Education Department in their guidance on their website has a section called medically vulnerable children. There are options if your child is medically vulnerable, or, and this is important, if someone is medically vulnerable in your home, that your child will be instructed remotely by Byram Hills. That is important. If you feel that you fall into any of those categories, that you go and look to see if you would qualify for that. Now, what does that mean is going to happen to your child? At the K-5 level, we will be assigning people to support the students who are on that remote instruction, the students who are never coming to school, right? In the beginning, at least, they have declared they're not coming to school. We'll provide them with that remote instruction. Know that if you are in that remote group at any time, you can change your mind and send your child to school. You would have to let us know. Please don't just put them on the bus. We need to know there's a transition and whose class they're going to go into. But you have the discretion as a parent to change your mind after it starts, or after you're comfortable, or after somebody's better, and you can send your child to school. And that may help the not decided, the undecided. If you want to try to start with that remote learning, if that's something that applies to you, or if you want to change your mind and send your child to school. The other thing I need to answer is, well, what happens if my child comes to school every day, but then they're in quarantine, or then somebody in the house has COVID and they have to stay home? How are we going to be addressing that? They will be assigned to their classroom teacher. They will live in that Google Classroom. The principals at the end of August will give very explicit instructions as to what that is going to look like for you, but know that we are planning that right now. They still live in the Google Classroom with that teacher and will be supported by that teacher. The parameters for that, we'll discuss it in more detail as we get closer to school. So scenario one, and this is the scenario that we are going to be in at the K-5 level for Wampus and Coman Hill. All students are going to return to school. Half of the students or so may be in another classroom supervised by a teacher or an aide for part of the day. There will be students in this scenario who are at home. That's the medically vulnerable I spoke about, in class or in another room, and they'll be instructed by the classroom teacher of record. I explained students home remotely from the beginning will have a different teacher than the classroom teacher. Students who are in the class with the teacher and have to quarantine or stay home will still be receiving instruction from their regular classroom teacher. How is that instruction going to look? Teachers are going to have flexibility with how they deliver the instruction. Live on a Google Meet, either on a Zoom Meet, perhaps there are pre-recorded lessons that are given to each group with instructional time and split periods with teachers. Sometimes teachers may split a period and sit at a Google Classroom and instruct the group at home during that classroom period. Sometimes, or students in the other room, and sometimes they will be instructing the students live. So it's going to vary based upon the teacher. But I think the parent question is, during the period, will my student be instructed by the classroom teacher? And the answer is yes, that the teachers are going to be structuring those lessons. Another question might be, well, how is the teacher or the aide in the other room going to know what to do with those children? That is part of the reason why we are doing this Wednesday early release, that the classroom teacher and the person supporting the children in the other room who are doing the activities designed by the teacher need to collaborate to make that happen effectively. We are not looking at the person in the other room with your child as a babysitter. That person is in that room to help support the instruction that the teacher already gave and to help support the independent practice that will take place. A percentage of students, this is a hybrid scenario, and this is what we're going to be doing for 7th grade through 12th grade. I think it's important to know, I don't anticipate that the elementary would have to go to any kind of hybrid level, but just so you know, we're doing a percentage of students 7th grade through 12th grade who are in every day, approximately 50%. And where it says alternating weeks, they are not coming alternating weeks. We'll have a cohort Monday, Tuesday, a cohort Thursday, Friday, and the alternating weeks will be the Wednesday. One group will go one Wednesday, one group will go the other. Same kind of instruction. And remote learning. What happens at Coman Hill and Wampus in the event that we have to go to remote learning? Pretty much the same master schedules. Peggy and Mary Beth will hand out a schedule. You will still have the instructional time for the classes that you have, but what they will be doing is they will be front loading academic classes to the beginning part of the day. And then the afternoon, they will have another schedule. So a schedule will be home. We are ready to switch at a minute's notice to remote and start the next day on the remote lessons. And again, the teachers at that point, I guess the question is, well, how will they instruct this whole group at home? Remember that we will have very specific schedules this time with student accountability for checking in and teachers and potentially aides or the other teachers working in these small groups during that classroom period. So they will be engaged in their classroom if we have to go remote during the time that is scheduled. So again, my district recommendation to the board was all K-6 students returning, 7 to 12 hybrid. The rest doesn't really apply to you because your K-5 children will all be in session. So what do the schedules actually look like? So for kindergarten, we have a group A and a group B. That will be a split. So typically think about a classroom. If I have 24 in a classroom, which is pretty high, but if I have 24 in a classroom, that means that 12 children will be in group A, 12 children will be in group B, approximately. 12 children are in a room. They start with the classroom teacher. 12 children are in a room. They start with the other teacher or the aide. They work on the social studies in the ELA block. From 9:20 to 10:55, that teacher is going to be going between rooms to make sure that they are conducting the instruction and supporting the children who are in that social studies and ELA block. You'll notice that these children pretty much stay together. They don't move. So they're going to be in that classroom for social studies ELA, in that classroom for lunch. Specials will come into that classroom. Math block will come into that classroom. Science and choice time, same thing. Now, does that mean your child is going to sit every day, all day in that same seat? Oh my goodness, no. We are certainly hoping to be taking kids out for multiple breaks, for movement breaks, for brain breaks, for mask breaks, every kind of thing that we can do, we will be doing during the course of the day. We know that the children can't sit like that. Their teachers are well-versed in what they are able to tolerate and what they are not. So we will have a lot of support there. Basically, you see the same thing in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, except broken up a little differently with the encore math blocks, but the same situation occurs where the teachers go into the classroom where your child is. This is very important to us. This means that your children are going to have exposure to only a certain number of children every single day. The outlier is going to be if your children take the bus. We are going to attempt to socially distance kids on the bus, and we're going to survey to see how many kids are planning to use the bus so we could try to really adjust our routes. But that is a point where children are going to be exposed to other children at the elementary level, not in school. In school, we are going to be keeping them isolated to the extent that we can. So this is what it looks like for the ELA and social studies block. I wrote with aide, but the B group could be with an aide or a teacher. They really vary. So A group is with the teacher, then B group is with the other adult, A group is with the other adult, and B group is with the teacher. And this is what the schedule work looks like. 11:30 on Wednesday, we will have early release at both schools so that we can have some collaboration and prep time. If you're looking around at other districts, you're going to see many of them have the entire day as half a remote day and half of a teacher collaboration or prep time. We just felt that it is most important to have these children in day every day. And we know that as parents, there is a difficulty if we had gone hybrid at an elementary level and if we had any kind of half-day scenario for childcare. So I hope that within the community, you can work together to support each other with that 11:30 a.m. dismissal time. Grade 6, I'm going to share this with my group later, but it's just showing schedule, 7th and 8th. I'm sorry, but I can't have 50 presentations. I think you understand. Remember, this is the elementary model that I told you about with group A and group B with students receiving direct instruction. If we go remote, and this is a secondary model, we're going to be dealing with students from a teacher desktop. We're looking into a device that would actually be better for some of that remote instruction, and we will be using document cameras so that kids can actually see teachers performing the lessons. I know a lot of our teachers did some pretty good aid to operate our document. I want you to know some of the very significant parts of it. We do have quarantine restrictions on travel. Please follow that New York State travel advisory. Please do not go to a travel advisory state and then send your child to school on the first day of school. That is incredibly important to us. So training, we will be sending out video training. August 14th, it will come from your principals. It will include a video from administrators talking about building protocols and expectations. It will be from school nurses about how to wear PPE appropriately, how to wash hands appropriately. We encourage you to share this with your children. These videos will be shared again with children when they come back to school in September, and we give them training on how to walk correctly in the hallways, on the labels, how to correctly wear your mask, when to wash hands. Something I don't think we did very well when we first went out in the spring, but we corrected that, was hand washing. We're going to have very explicit times during the day when that hand washing will occur. We have installed additional hand washing troughs in the elementary schools to help support us with extra hand washing. You'll receive also in that training video something from the transportation supervisor about how they are going to load and unload buses. You should be receiving a transportation survey either tomorrow or Monday, asking if you're expecting to take the bus. Not binding, you can change your mind, but we'd like to get a sense so we can look at routes. And student schedules will also be sent by the principals in August. I told you about the staff health checks and the parent guardian health checks of children for symptoms, the self-attestation and the walk-through temperature screening machines. Masks is a big topic. We are going to say that masks will be worn by everyone at all times unless staff direct students when to take mask breaks. Mask breaks could happen very often. If you are in a class that only has 12 students in it, and let's take percentages out, percentages of students who are staying home for remote instruction, or percentages of students who may be out at a specific time. If it warrants not wearing a mask because they are socially distanced and the children are not talking at that particular time period, there are going to be multiple opportunities for the children to be in as safe a position as possible and to take masks off. Teachers will know about that. They will be trained on that. But it is very important that if children are talking, even if they're 6 feet apart from each other, that we are really consistent with our mask use. So please don't feel that, masks are going to be worn all day. We will have those breaks in there, just like we know we need movement breaks and we know we need hand washing breaks. That's going to become part of the structures that we have every day. I encourage you to make sure that the masks that you have for your child are approved, that somebody has looked at that, either a friend who's in the medical profession or your own health physician, to see if the mask is properly covering your child's mouth and nose. We will have hand sanitizer everywhere when you come into schools, in teachers' classrooms. If your child cannot use the hand sanitizer, that is something you need to contact the nurse about, and we will make sure that they will not. We are going to provide our staff with face shields. We have already ordered them. So if staff want to wear a face shield with a mask, they can. If staff are 6 feet or more away from your child, they may take the mask off and keep the face shield so that children can see their mouths, but that teacher is not spreading anything to your child, and that child is not spreading anything to the teacher. There was the news on transportation, social distancing. I think I've explained the split classes. Outdoors. I have a lot of questions about outdoors. We are not allowed to set up wedding type tents on school property without state education department approval. However, thank you to the BHEF. They are meeting me on Monday, and we are walking through every outdoor space in the district to see how we might be able to support turning that into outdoor learning spaces. Our class plans, our structured plans for the state needed to be done before I could start moving on an outdoor idea. So I just want to thank the BHEF who reached out to me. They're good partners to this district, and they're going to help me with that. Sometimes kids are going to have classes in the gym or the library or the theater or the cafeteria. And you're going to see that they are not separated into two different rooms, an A group and a B group, because they are socially distanced. Wherever we could do that, we tried to keep the classroom together. But if they're smaller classrooms, we didn't have choices. We'll have circulation routes, we'll have signage, we will have floor markings. And think about it from your child's perspective. As a parent, you may be sitting there right now saying, oh my gosh, how is my child supposed to take this all in on the first day of school? We are planning between now and the time school starts to develop the soft landing pad for your child. We need to send certain trainings out to them like, hi, this is your assistant principal. I want to walk you through school and what it's going to look like. We need to know that as parents, you are supported before school starts. With looking to our psychologists right now for training that we can give you as parents to help you prepare your child to come into school. It's going to look so much different than it ever did before. Students who are new to schools are going to be showing up with face masks. They're going to see teachers with face masks and shields on. We are aware that we need to develop that soft landing pad. We are developing that now. We also know how important it is for your children to develop relationships when they come to school, relationships with their teacher, relationships with each other. Our guidance department at the middle school and the high school, our guidance chairperson, and our elementary assistant principals, principals, and school psychologists are now going to be working on that plan to get that to you too. We know how difficult it's going to be for them to return to a different kind of school. So we are going to prepare for that. We will avoid congregating in all areas. We will avoid any kind of large school assemblies. Our phys ed and music classes are going to be looking a lot different. I suspect there's going to be a lot less volleyball and a lot more yoga. Our teachers have been working actively on that through their curriculum committees this summer. Parents, we love you in the schools. You've been parents as reading partners. You've come in for classroom celebrations. You have been such a support to our students, and we love the idea of a school community. Right now, I have to say that we cannot have visitors in the school of any kind. That's going to be an adjustment for us, but I just feel that it is necessary to only have the people who need to be in schools in them at that time. Non-employees who are working in the district are going to be filling out self-attestations, have their temperatures checked before entering, and people will only be in the building if they are required to be there to work. It's important for us to keep our facilities as closed as possible. Now, some people may be asking about questions like Armonk Children's Corner, what's going to be happening with that? We'll be figuring that out in the next couple of days. If we can socially distance and provide 2 alternate spaces at Coleman Hill for Armonk Children's Corner, we may do that. I still need to work through that with the Board of Education and to figure out from the assistant principals how that's going to work. Some parents might be asking questions about the activity buses and will those be happening? We don't know yet. That's on our list to do after this state plan is submitted either tonight or tomorrow. So we will be looking into those activity buses. I'm not inclined to say yes, but I really want to explore that much more before we come up with an answer and before I can make a recommendation. Hygiene, I already talked about the frequent hand washing and the sanitizer that will be provided. So cleaning, I want to talk a little bit about this for a second. And there is one part of this that is actually not happening, but we have our custodians have cleaning protocols in place multiple times during the day to clean high touch surfaces, multiple times during the day to be cleaning bathrooms. So we have all of those checklists set up, ready for custodians to do. They're doing it right now. We have our extended school year program for students with special needs in right now, and they are doing a good job of keeping those facilities clean in that way. Other things that we have spent a lot of time on, and with health professionals as well, air conditioning. Coleman Hill was air conditioned last year. The board has agreed that we will air condition Wampus before school starts, and we anticipate approximately 75 to 80% of the building to be completed with air conditioning in September. Air conditioning, we've gone back and forth with medical professionals to look at what is the safest way to have air conditioning. Our air conditioning systems let in a certain amount of fresh air intake with every unit. We are also installing MERV 13 filters into all of our air conditioning units, which is recommended as the highest level of air conditioning filter. It's recommended that MERV 13 filters are changed 3 times a year. We are changing them 4 times a year just to be extra cautious. Those are very expensive filters, but we feel that everything needs to be put in place when fresh air is not possible because of the heat, that we have safe air for children. So know that that is happening as well. Our schools, we have access to something called BioShield, and we will be using it this year. And it is something that is similar to what the MTA uses so that COVID does not adhere to surfaces. That product, which is EPA approved and approved to be used in schools, is good for 90 days for protection. We are going to utilize that product every 75 days to be assured. So we will have custodians cleaning every day, but know that that BioShield is really the thing that we are anticipating is going to be the best protection. For contact tracing, as I said, I am working with the county. They are having people who are designated just for schools for contact tracing. They will be asking us for all of your information in the event that we have a live case. They will find all of the people who may have had contact with your child or with that staff member. So if a staff member has COVID, we will be providing them with all of your information, and the Department of Health will be calling you to let you know, and they will be recommending when quarantines have to happen. The same scenario for if it is a child. What we are learning from the Department of Health is that it is a direct contact that must be quarantined. So for example, if my husband goes to work every day and there is somebody in his office who has COVID, the Department of Health will be calling my husband and telling my husband to quarantine. I am not supposed to be quarantining. I am not a direct contact unless my husband has COVID. Department of Health is saying I should be returning to work. So they have very strict guidelines around that. And we're going to share what that looks like by the August meetings with the community. I think this community would love to see what is the district mitigation strategy in the event that we have a live case. And I have to say the chances of us not having a live case.
Sorry, I had to pull forward.
Oh, I think somebody needs to mute, or Tim needs to mute that person. Thanks. And school closures. I alluded to this earlier on. The Department of Health may tell us we just need to close down cohorts or sections, but as a school district with the Board of Education, we may determine that something more severe is warranted, such as a school closure. And at any time that happens, we will move right to remote instruction. Andrew Taylor is working on ordering enough Chromebooks for the families who needed a Chromebook the last time, or who do need a Chromebook for remote instruction, to deploy those as soon as they come in, so that we are all ready at a moment's notice to turn to the next day's instruction. I just want to remind everyone that we will have principals' coffees again in August. I will attend those. We will also have our August 14th principal video coming out with all of the directions about how to start school. We will be looking at that soft landing pad for you and your children for how to return to school during this time when things seem so much different than they were before. I have a stakeholder group that includes members from all different stakeholder constituencies. It's, I think, 40 something people long. We're going to continue to meet. We've been meeting thus far, and we have 2 more meetings scheduled. And the Board of Education meets with me every week, whether we are live or I'm in small work group sessions to work through this return to school together. Very important to us. I want to take some questions, but I first want to start with a few questions that I received. And I think that I received these ahead of time, and thank you. And some of them, it just gives me joy, are from former students of mine who are now parents in the district. I think that I've addressed some of your questions about discussing the pandemic with younger children and socialization. That socialization will happen. Since we are cohorting in those much smaller groups, it is going to be easier for us to allow those children to have little nests together of groups that they are traveling with every single day. I covered a question about the activity bus. That's a TBD. Recess. Are we going to be wearing masks at recess? And yes, if students are not able to be socially distanced at recess, they are going to be wearing masks. How will, let me see what other, what parameters determine changing our expected plan? That's a great question. rate of transmission in our town will determine us changing plan, and also the governor. The governor said if we have an average of a certain number of days of transmission at 9%, if we have COVID cases at 9%, that he is going to determine that schools should close. Now that's a countywide or a statewide issue, but we are going to be looking as a district at our countywide numbers again before school starts. Are COVID tests required? No, they are not, but I encourage people to take them if you have symptoms of COVID. What will the new pickup procedures be for Coleman Hill? No longer in person, question mark. So Mary Beth, I don't know if you want to address that question for Coleman Hill arrival and pickup.
We are in the process of writing those protocols. So as soon as those are finalized, of course, we would be sharing that with everyone.
Great. Can we pack snack and lunch from home? Please do. That's great. That's the best. Scenario 2, that's the hybrid. Will elementary students who are scheduled at home have synchronous learning or only assignments like it was in the spring? So I'm not anticipating the elementary going to hybrid. I'm anticipating this full socially distanced idea moving, and the other option being that we go remote. I do not anticipate us going to a hybrid scenario, but we are preparing for that. Wampus and Coleman Hill under remote. How many students participate in a synchronous remote session at a time? What a great question. Thank you so much, Stephanie. So what we will do is we will have that block of time that's set aside for, let's say it's ELA and social studies. The classroom teacher will be living in Google Classroom. She may tell students, or he may tell students, if you are in group A, let's meet in the beginning. I'm taking attendance. I'm going to see if you have any questions about these activities. You're going to do them for 15 or 20 minutes. Then I am going to spend 15 or 20 minutes with group B. And then I'm going to come back to group A, go over what you've done, and provide you with instruction. So in other words, at that time, the teacher will be seeing every student during that period. Sometimes it will be a live session with all of them listening to a specific skill the teacher is imparting at that one moment. Sometimes it will be smaller groups. I did just see a quick question about how are the kids going to be eating lunch. They'll be in those same socially distanced rooms. So when your child has that mask off and is putting food in their mouths, they are going to be at least 6 feet from another student. And the BHEF is looking to help me with this, but as much as we can, we will have kids outside. So if these kids could be outside sitting on, you know, little pillows or something that we're bringing to school with us, a pillow's not a good idea, but some little cushions that they're going to be sitting on outside, and they're socially distanced and eating their lunch on a sunny day under a tree. I mean, I think that's ideal, but they will be with that small cohort that they are in class with every day, that anywhere up to 12 or so students in that small group. I don't even anticipate those groups being up to 12, I should tell you, but they could be. All right, Tim, did you want to, or principals? And I see I did not introduce our principals. Mary Beth Krupe is here. Peggy McInerney's here. I know that our assistant principals are here, Dave Mack and Janine Marie DeFalco. I want to thank all of them for not having a summer either. It's just what we have to do right now. We're committed to doing this for you and your children. We know we need to be flexible. We know this is going to change at any given time. And another thing that we know is that this is not ideal. It is not ideal. Ideal is that we do not have COVID and every child can come to school and frolic around each other all day and play tag and do all of those things that we know they love to do. But it is, I think, the best that we can do given the situation and the pandemic that we face. So Tim, any quick questions?
Yes, and also I'll let principals and APs, if you're looking at questions, if you want to address some of those. There are some questions about buses and the protocols on buses that if you could just clarify or talk about specifics.
Sure. So Phil Peterson, the supervisor of transportation, and Jonathan Vasquez will be sending out a video, and it's going to show you exactly how to line up at bus stops, how to stay a certain amount of feet apart, how when you're lining up and coming into a bus, you remain socially distanced. They're going to have little markers in the bus to show you what markers to stand on before you sit, to walk to and wait at until the next marker's free. And they will be loading buses from the back to the front, except for kindergartners. We're still keeping kindergartners in the front of the bus. They cannot, they're going to get lost. So we're going to do that from back to front. The bus drivers are going to be monitoring that kids are staying in their seats. If we know we only have a certain number of kids riding a particular bus, we will schedule those buses to be socially distanced. If we know that we have larger ridership on the bus, that's why the survey is coming out. If possible, we will deploy some of those routes to other buses that are very low numbers, or we will load from the back to the front and then load from the back to the front again as we're keeping distance. But there is very much a chance that your child will be sitting in a seat and there will be a child in a seat right next to them. That is why it's crucial they have masks on at all times on the buses. And the assistant principals are working on drop-off times in the morning, like where are people dropping off kids if you're driving your children to school, so that we kind of have, I mean, I think really it's been seamless at Coleman Hill, and Wampus became pretty seamless with the parent drop-off, especially with the new lane. So they will be designating how that's going to happen.
Okay, good.
Starts.
Yes, and there's more questions about building procedures around recess, visiting the bathroom, and other questions around keeping kids socially distanced. Peggy, you're
About recess. So I think we could start with recess. Your children are probably going to have a little more recess than they normally do, because we do have to get them outside. The playgrounds are going to be wiped between uses for different groups that go out, but they'll go out with their little pod. They'll go out with their 12, and if they happen to be in a larger space with the 20 something students in the class, they'll be out there at recess with those groups. They'll wash hands before they go out. We learned a lot about hand washing. They're going to wash hands before they come back in. They're going to wash their hands more than you've ever seen your children wash their hands in their lives, supervised by adults. So that will definitely happen for recess. What was the other question, Tim? I think lunch was one too.
Yes, lunch and bathrooms.
And somebody had asked, are we going to employ some sort of plexiglass shields? We are looking into these right now, so people can see them. We are looking into see if we can get an order. I know Tim's making fun of me. Get an order of them in time.
There's also some children I'm waving to that are in on the parents' lap.
So we're going to look to see if we could get those. There's a however. It is not recommended that kids sit behind these plexiglass things all day, right? Like this is not the ideal. Everybody, the CDC says, I mean, they need air. They don't need to be behind that. They need to be behind that when it is the safest to use it because of the activity you are doing. So for example, if I am going to have a very active, I'm going to put students together in small groups. They're going to be maybe 3 feet apart from each other in this small group working together. Those plexiglass shields are probably going to be a very good thing for them to use so they could talk to each other. If I am a student who's receiving OT, PT, or speech, and the teacher is on the other side of that plexiglass with a face shield on, that would also be a time that something like that would be used. But we are not encouraging having these up around your children at all times. That is not what's recommended as far as like air and breathing and everything else is concerned.
There's some questions around instruments and art supplies and whether we'll be having music classes.
Yeah, so we're looking into our music classes right now. Our teachers have been working on what is called a flipped classroom. So what music classes, and this still has to be finalized, but what music classes could look like is the music teacher comes into your class, describes the notation, works with you on things that they could work with you on as a classroom teacher, so that you are not blowing your trumpet at the other students who are in the room with you necessarily. So we may be having those music lessons, those music pieces happening at home. A flipped classroom to work with the students, so is everyone else for that matter, coming into your pod, your nest, whatever, I don't know, I feel like those are nicer words, to work with your children. And there are going to be supplies. We are really trying to limit classroom supplies that are shared. So they are going to be utilizing supplies that perhaps parents have on your parent supply list. And we're going to try to limit that as much as possible. But there are questions about things like library books. What are we doing about shared library books. Some teachers have extensive classroom libraries with like 500 books. So when we were talking to the teachers about that, we were talking about deploying books, maybe on a weekly level, for students to have those classroom readers for the week, to submit those classroom readers back, to let those classroom readers sit for a number of days before they're wiped down and then distributed to another child. So we're trying to work out some of the granular pieces of that in classrooms. You can imagine that your classroom teachers at an elementary level have been thinking of every granular detail and asking us questions about it. From the sense of, if I have an aide or another teacher in another room who's been working with my children for 20 minutes and I need to catch up with that teacher to see where they left the children off, I don't want to be talking to the teacher in the hallway. I want the transition to be as fast as possible. So we talked about picking up the phone and talking to each other on the phone system to see where kids are before you switch those classrooms. I mean, those elementary teachers are sticklers for detail. So they're really asking all of those hard questions right now. We're ironing out some of those tougher ones.
There's some medical questions about COVID and the transmission of COVID. For example, hearing in some studies that maybe it can be transmitted in bathrooms when toilets are flushed, and also with the type of masks that are appropriate for it. Some studies showing it might travel more than 6 feet. Can you address sort of the medical issues and the advice you're getting, Jen, from the medical professionals?
So the advice that I am getting from Dr. Thomas Murray, who again is the Associate Director for Pediatric Immunology at Yale New Haven Children's Hospital, and I'm looking at all of these studies too, by the way. The advice that we are getting is that it is best for children to be in school. We have to clean the bathrooms. We have to use these approved products X number of times a day. We have to be on top of these high touch surfaces. We have to, as far as transmission is concerned, we are still hearing very low transmission numbers for children of the elementary ages. And that is what is prompting us not to necessarily do this for a secondary level. I'm wondering if I'm hitting upon all of that. What did you say again, Tim? Did I miss any of that?
Yeah, just the mask wearing. Are we requiring any type of specific masks?
We are not. Face coverings are just required, but I certainly would say that, you know, if you have something like, I use reusable masks most of the time, and these are 4-ply masks, you know, it's just like what I'm doing as a human being. I have surgical masks, and when I go to a supermarket, I'm putting a surgical mask on and I'm disposing of my surgical mask. Or letting that surgical mask sit for X number of days before I use it again. I would say the best thing that you can do is consult your pediatrician and say to them, what are you recommending for my child? And also, if you know a health professional or are going to the pediatrician, ask them to see how that mask fits your child. That is the best thing that you can do right now. I think somebody just popped up with a question of how can we reduce the spread of COVID, or how can we prevent this from happening? We cannot. We can do the best that we can do, but somebody is going to go home potentially and see their parent who may have just been on a plane and come to school, or a staff member. And we have to just make sure, if we are socially distancing as much as possible, if we are wearing protective masks when we are not socially distanced, if we are doing incessant hand washing and keeping ourselves safe, that is the safest thing that we can do. And as a parent, if you're concerned, remember, if you have a medically vulnerable child or someone in your home is medically vulnerable, go on the New York State Education Department website. Look there to see if you qualify, because if you have any of those two conditions, you likely do. You can have remote instruction. You are the parents who can make the decisions about your children and whether you feel safe to send them or not. And if you don't, Byram Hills, for the first time ever, through New York State Education Department, has a responsibility to provide the remote instruction for you. So I would say, as parents, you know, it's not a good analogy. Tim knows I like analogies. This is not a good one. But I say, when my children were in high school and it was a Friday night and they were going to go to a friend's house and it started snowing, I'm making that decision whether my child is going or not. I'm saying, it's starting to snow, I'm not comfortable, you are staying home. And as parents, you have that right to do that too. Please don't feel that these schedules we're putting out there are forcing you into a scenario you're not comfortable. you do have those choices. So look at the New York State Education Department website, know what we're doing in school every day. I don't know how it could be safer. I cannot tell you anything is safe. I cannot say going to a gas station, going into a dry cleaner, coming into school. The reason that COVID is spreading the way it is because people are not maintaining safety. So Dr. Richard Stumacher told us something interesting about Northwell Health and about the critical care, the emergency room facilities. He said that not one doctor there, since they have been implementing face masks, has contracted COVID, despite the fact they are dealing with COVID patients every single day. He stresses the hand washing and the wearing of those masks will be protection, and that if it is protecting these doctors who are in emergency room scenarios with COVID positive patients, he recommends that that's going to be the same for here. And he also recommends that face shield that we are providing for teachers.
Jen, there are some questions about homeschooling. Then I'll ask our Peggy. I know she was trying to get in earlier to maybe address some of the instructional questions around placement, around the groupings of the AB groups, around special education and academic support. But first with homeschooling, if we can talk, there seems to be some parents asking for clarification on students who remain at home.
Okay.
I will mention that I will post
Hold on
a link.
1 second, Tim, because I saw something pop on, but doctors are wearing a 95 mask. They are not. Dr. Stumacher said that the doctors in the critical care at Northwell Health do not have access to N95. It is only surgeons. So he was speaking from a regular surgical mask perspective. Go ahead, Tim.
Sure, sure. I will post in the link. I did have some information on homeschooling on our website, but we also want to add some clarification about what remote instruction may look like and the decision. Again, Jen, I know you covered it earlier, but for some who may be tuned in later, about the homeschool option or parents keeping their kids at home.
Yep. So two homeschool options. One, we do have a certain amount of parents who want to homeschool, maybe because you are enjoying what has happened in the spring, or because you're good at it and you prefer to do it for your family. Or maybe you're not even good at it, but you want to do it for your family. The homeschooling parents, you can get in touch with Tim Kaltenecker. He has a resource on the website, or even go to our website first for homeschooling to look at how he can support you as a homeschooling parent. But if you are technically homeschooling, you are doing that yourself, utilizing resources and submitting plans to the school for approval. If you are qualified for the New York State Education Department remote learning from the school district, it's because your child is medically fragile or somebody in your house may have an immune compromise. There's a list of criteria of ways that you can do that. And I will be honest with our school community. If you are, if your parent or a grandparent is living in the household and has a reason why, and that is the reason why your child, you're choosing not to send them to school, I am not going to ask you for the medical records of your parent. We need to just trust in this community that you are giving me the facts that there is somebody in your household and it scares you to send your child to school and you would like them to be on remote instruction. If they start in remote instruction and your situation changes and you want to send them to school, you may do so. You have to let us know. We'll do the soft landing pad for your child to come back to school and where they will be placed. So I think that gives a little fluidity for parents that you can make decisions that are really best for your classroom. And I keep getting these surgical masks are minimally effective. I am also a doctor. I'm just telling you what a critical care doctor told me from Northwell Health. So I think as a parent, and I appreciate your feedback, that you do what you think is best for your child. Okay, he is wrong. Okay. So I think you just have to do what's best for your child. And that's why I'm recommending that you go to your pediatrician. And if it doesn't feel safe for you and you're a medical professional and you choose to keep your child home, that's something you can do too. Yeah. And read the literature. Okay, I don't mean to inflame you. I just really, want to support parents in talking to their medical professionals.
Right, and then maybe Peggy McInerney, our principal at Wampus, can you address some of the grouping, the placement, and then some of the academic support services and special education services?
Yes. So we have spent the last 2 months discussing placement and how to carefully place all of your children for the upcoming school year. And we ran the gamut from doing our traditional placement practices to looping children. After careful study and really listening to our teachers and reading up on professional literature, we decided that we were not going to loop the children. We are doing our traditional placement practices. However, we are adding some new variables to that. We need to put our children into new class formations. And within those new class formations, we need to break them into group A's and group B's. That decision is being determined by the building administration along with each building's placement teams. And the most important piece going into September is when we build these group A's and group B's, we are planning for just the social emotional supports that our children need, knowing that they left in March and we didn't wrap up in June really seeing them. So we are making sure that children are being carried forward into the next year's placement with a few familiar faces. In past history, we would do one familiar face. This year, we are building the cohorts with more than one familiar face. So children come into next year's classroom with their teacher and in their cohort with more than one familiar face from last year's grouping. We also plan to study the groupings once the year gets underway to make sure that the groupings are good, and we might reevaluate them come October 15th. We will determine that after that time. You will find out your child's teacher in mid-August. Actually, today we are in the midst of conducting placement. So this takes us hours, and we are studying every single child, kindergarten through 5th grade, to make sure that they are not only placed with the appropriate teacher in the right classroom and in the appropriate group A or group B cohort.
Peggy, can you address new students to the district? Mm-hmm. Like, are they going to see school, right?
Yep. So we are planning to have orientation sessions virtual. We have videos being created to have the children come through the virtual sessions to come see the building, do a map of what each building looks like. We also have some orientation days scheduled, but we are just waiting on guidance for that at the end of August for any new children coming into the schools, which is what we've done in the past, and we might be doing that again at the end of August. The new children who are part of our district, we are also placing them. We look at where they're coming from, and we try to place them in a familiar setting with other new children. We try to study all those variables for new children coming into the district. On top of that, we are now beginning to look at September 1st. What does September 1st look like? When we went to e-learning, we knew that our youngest learners did not have that experience with their teachers of going into e-learning. When we open up schools, we spend that first week of time going through clear expectations, clear routines, clear procedures.
Please excuse the interruption. Gideon, if you can, please pass by the main office. Gideon, you is by the main office, please.
Beginning the very first week of school, we will be helping our children navigate these new routines and procedures, which will include Google Classroom, the behaviors on a Google Meet, all the things that we were teaching our children in a remote learning, we will be looking to do the very first week of school and the very first month of school, and then carrying it out through the entire pandemic until things return to normal. For academics and instruction, we have created the structured schedule that Jen spoke about. If we need to go into e-learning, the core academics come down into the morning, and our children who receive any learning paths where they get additional supports for enrichment, for intervention, for special education, they will get that in the afternoon. All children will be getting their specials in the afternoon in remote learning. The really important piece of the group A's and B's in remote learning is we learn from you and we learn from our teachers that 25 children in a Google Meet is not good for our children. It's too many kids. So the largest groups that you will see in a synchronous session will be 12 children in a synchronous session because it will be done by group A's or group B's. That model will also make sure that we're able to service all of the services that we provide, from response to intervention, academic intervention supports, special education, everything that we do in the school, we will be able to do in the home learning environment because of how we created these smaller groupings for the whole class in a synchronous session.
I saw some questions about absences. What is going to happen if my child has a cold and I keep them home? Know that they will still be living in the Google Classroom. They will still be able to complete assignments in the Google Classroom, and we will explain more at the end of August what that looks like. But we would prefer, actually, if your child has any kind of symptoms, that they do stay home. So don't think that these absences will be counting against them. If we have sessions where they have to show up to work with a teacher during that day, it's expected that they'd be there, unless, of course, they're very sick. But yes, we are going to proceed with much more caution than we usually do about when your child has some sniffles. There are some children who have they have allergies. I mean, this is something that we know and we understand this as they're coming to school. But if you start to see symptoms that are unusual, particularly. And e-learning assignments on Wednesday, Peggy, a question of will they have them for the afternoon for the 11:30 session?
So let me, and I just want to go back one step further. In terms of when you meet your child's new teacher, when you meet your child's new teacher, that's the time that you get to see all of the day's specials activities. So, you know, library is on Monday and art is on Tuesday. Our classroom teachers in the elementary schools will give you their specific schedule. Then they will also be giving you just how that looks in terms of their group A and group B. So you'll know where your child is. You'll get all that information from your classroom teacher. We are studying currently, I mean, we've been doing it all summer, platforms to help us so that our children can continue to do a lot of independent work at their level. So a 5-year-old will be getting different types of learning experiences this year that are independent, that our teachers don't always need to be with them, or the caregiver doesn't always need to be with them. So I'm just going to take you through if you're a child in group B and they have these independent activities that the teacher aide is helping them with, when they go home on Wednesday, they will likely be continuing with that, but you will not have synchronous sessions from your teacher on Wednesday. That will not happen on Wednesday afternoon.
I'm also getting a question about positive cases. What happens if we have a child who is really exhibiting symptoms and we think there may be a positive case? So our nurses' offices have been restructured and rearranged. So there's like a COVID symptom room, and then there is I just come for my medicine or I stub my toe room, separate places for both. And we will be contacting the Board of Health, the Department of Health, and it is likely if we have confirmed cases, we're going to listen to their recommendations about whether we need to contact parents and close down sections early, whether we need to notify parents at night that the next day or few days pending tests will be, that we will be remote. So this is really fluid, and I know how difficult. I had 2 small children at one time. I know how difficult it is with coverage. I know because I'm the person who calls snow days, right? So I know how inconvenient it is and always try to let you know as early as possible when you might have to go to your alternate plans. So we will err on the side of caution in that, and we will have what that specific protocol looks like to you for the end of August. I received something, we'll take a note about everyone, about accommodations of start and end times at Coleman and Wampus because of parents who are going to be doing later drop-offs, et cetera. So we'll look into that and get back to parents. And twins, interestingly enough, yes, twins will be in the same rooms, right, Peggy? Wouldn't you say? I mean, they like to reduce transmission, or what are you doing with that?
So twins, really what you do is when we communicate with parents to send us any input, we traditionally have kept our twins separated. We have heard from parents who want their twins to be separated and continue to keep their twins separated. It's really important that you reach out to Ms. Krupe and myself to let us know if you want your twins together, because currently most parents want their twins separated. So let us know what you need to reach out to us. I don't know who asked that question, but reach out to us. We're definitely.
Questions. What's the harm of keeping classrooms virtual for now and hope to open up later? I don't know that there is going to be any time, if we can socially distance, that it is going to be a better time. It's important for children to get back to school. Everyone's saying it, American Academy of Pediatrics, Department of Health. And for parents who just aren't ready, you probably meet those qualifying factors to stay remote. And will you be able to transfer between the remote? What is the difference? If you, for a medical reason, have your child home in the remote scenario and you choose to start sending them to school, they're not going to be with that remote teacher anymore. I want everyone to understand that. So when you're saying, oh, well, I'll start remote and then they'll just go in with the classroom teacher, it will be a different classroom teacher likely, because they will be going into the general 2nd grade classroom pool where we have a seat designated for them in the event that they come back.
Jen, there were a few more questions just about our rationale for the schedule. If we want to address that again, we did look at a variety of schedules, and there's a lot of models out there, and we had to go with what we thought was best for our students and our community needs. And we know that it's really difficult and challenging to meet everybody's needs in the schedule.
So I guess the question might be, why are you going every day? Why aren't you doing half days? Why aren't you doing every other day? So we're not doing half days because we have busing, and a lot of the schools that are doing an AM PM session do not have busing. So it's easier for them to manage that. I find that incredibly difficult for a parent, from a parent perspective. but there are some school districts that are choosing to do that. For us, we have the capacity, we have the square footage. That is a determining factor for Byram Hills. I know one local district that was going to move their third grade and fourth grade to a high school so that they could socially distance and get K-6 students back in. Our K-6 students do not have the learning dispositions to do this work by themselves. It is most important that if we can keep them 6 feet away from each other in class sessions and safe and with masks when they're not 6 feet, and if we can instruct them by a classroom teacher and support them with a person who's working in our schools during that independent time, that is infinitely better instruction than that child trying to work at home. Now, there may be a household where somebody is fantastic with working with their child from home. And if remote works better for you, look at that option for yourself. But generally, that is not the case for us. We need to get these children back into school for academic, social, and emotional needs. They need regular schedules and regular days. And I am not looking at this as your kids sitting in a room pent up all day with a mask on. I am looking at frequent breaks outside, frequent movement breaks, frequent mask breaks, distanced in a way that this can happen in the safest environment that we can provide. I can't guarantee that no one in Byram Hills School District will contract COVID. I can't. So as a parent, you need to make the decision of whether you are comfortable with all of the things we've put into place between cleaning and, we sent our building plans to somebody who developed a design model for us and shows us how to put seats in classrooms facing in the same direction so that they are socially distant. Like, we're taking all of those aspects very seriously. And we're also taking seriously what you said about instruction in the spring. And if we have to go out to remote instruction again, it is going to look much different than it did in the spring. Every student will have a schedule and will be reporting in for the day in their schedule. And what was the other one, Tim?
Am I on? Yeah, that was mainly it, Jen. It was about the schedule and our rationale.
Okay, I
There are
also had
lots
some
of questions.
special education and IEP questions. Jill Boynton is going to be running a child meeting next week. She is sending something out to parents by the end of this week. That's another time to have specific questions about special education met. And I'm sure she wouldn't mind you reaching out to her for questions specific to your child as well. How are classes being made? Oh, Peggy covered this. Will the district consider ending Wampus earlier to provide parents sufficient time for pickup if kids are in Coman Hill and Wampus? We're going to work on that.
Yeah, just so everyone understands that too. If you feel like you're having trouble getting from one building to the next, we've had that in the past. Just call one of the secretaries. We'll hold your child for you. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, and regarding instruction, Molly asked a question about if we do go to e-learning, what is that going to look like? So when our plan becomes public by tomorrow, it should be, we're going to upload it to the state. There's an entire section on instruction and what those instruction models will look like. So Molly, that will help you really see how the instruction will be a lot different than the spring. We couldn't send all of that to you now because we would have overwhelmed you. I kind of think the 20-something pages we sent you already was overwhelming. But if you just look at how we're planning now and what I sent you yesterday, and know that the other options exist if we need to move over to them, I thought that would be most helpful.
And Peggy, there's a question specifically about the transition to third grade. If you want to address that, I know the transitions are a big concern.
Yeah, so similar. So at the end of August, we have orientation days for grade 3. We will be looking to conduct the same kind of orientation days. We just have to figure out how we're doing that.
Right. And Jen, I want to remind you, we have another principal's coffee coming up in a few minutes, so we have to get ready for that as well.
We do. I did receive something about there are children who are medically unable to wear masks, and how are we going to manage that? So we're going to see who that is with their medical documentation that they cannot wear a mask, and we'll talk to families individually about that, but they will have to be kept at a longer distance from kids who are 6 feet apart and wearing masks. So we will definitely work on that though. And I think I just want to end. I was just trying to see if there are any quick other questions. I think between now, Tim, do you have a way to take these questions
I
and
am
copy
going,
them?
yes, I am going to save the chat now.
So
we will
he'll
have these.
save the chat, and I think it's great if Peggy and Mary Beth can send out to you some responses. Please give us a couple days. We've been like we left work at 9 o'clock last night, but give us a few days and we will answer these questions, and then we'll send them out to you in sort of a little Google link so you could see if your question was not answered, what the answer is. It's important for us to address them. And I just want to end by saying we did not answer all questions. We will try. We will have other opportunities to do this. Remember what your parent choices are as a parent, and I respect that as an educator and a parent myself. Our goal is just to support you with some of these things that you're saying, and you speaking up is critical, and speaking up to us is critical. The whole thing about arrival, dismissal, and kids at both buildings, like that's now something we're going to take with us. You didn't put that on Facebook Moms or something like that for people to comment and be angry about. You put it here, and that's so special to us to get to that question for you. We don't want anyone to be inflamed unnecessarily. We are doing the best we can. We will take that advice. Like I know that there was a parent who's a medical professional and was talking about masks. I would love for you to send me an email. Let's have more conversations about that, right? Because this can structure how we're doing things. So we appreciate these comments. We are not your adversaries. So thanks everybody for joining us today. This is an incredible school community. Kudos to all of you who have kept our transmission rates so low in this town by practicing such safety with your families. To all of the kids who I see on here today, we love seeing you. We miss you. We hope you're having like the most awesome summer, playing outside, being with your families. And to everyone here, I hope you keep yourselves and your families safe. We care about you and we care about what you have to say. So thanks for joining today, everyone.